You're listening to Catching Wildfire, a podcast by the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association.
Hi, my name is Kim Zagaris, and I'm with Western Fire Chiefs, and this is Catch Wildfire podcast, where we discuss cutting-edge technology and operational innovation in wildfire. And today, I have Scott Agnew, president of FirstNet, built with AT&T, and Jeff Bratcher, deputy director of the First Responder Network Authority, otherwise known as FirstNet. Thank you for being here. You two gentlemen represent the creation of the world's first nationwide broadband network for public safety. This is essential for the future of wildland firefighting and public safety communications landscape as a whole. I mean, it's really a different time. I'll start off with, can each of you explain your organizations?
So thank you, Chief, for having me here. I'm Jeff Bratcher, Deputy Executive Director at the FirstNet Authority. So in this public-private partnership, we're the public side of the partnership. So a federal government agency within the Department of Commerce, within NTIA. So that is my organization. We've got about 180 federal staff to oversee the contract, work with public safety, drive needs and requirements into this network that then Scott and the AT&T team execute on.
Yep. And I'm Scott Agnew, president of FirstNet, and AT&T is the contractor in this relationship. We're responsible for executing everything that's required on the contract, making sure it's in alignment with the law and all the oversight that the authority does to ensure this is America's public safety network and it's highly resilient and available.
And by no means, in the time this has happened, has this been easy. It's been a unique process, I think, for not only the two of you, but I think for public safety as a whole. So my next question is, I'm going to go to you, Jeff. What was the origin of the FirstNet technical vision, and how did we validate it?
Great question, Chief. So the origin of the technical vision, this is September 11th, Remembrance Week. So this is the 24-year anniversary of the attacks in New York City. And as everyone knows, the networks were congested. There was no getting calls through text, anything like that. So that really spurred what came to be the legislation that was passed in 2012 to ensure public safety could communicate when they needed to communicate on the networks. So the initial underpinnings were priority and preemption for public safety on a wireless broadband network, which had not been done before. Public safety, I think, back in those days was just seen as another enterprise customer to the wireless carriers. And we wanted to drive, and the legislation mandated, we need a dedicated lane for public safety in those times of crisis and disaster. So we took those initial requirements from public safety. All public safety came together to lobby and get the legislation passed. And that's what really drove into the legislation, keeping it technology relevant. So don't build a system that would be obsolete after the next generation of wireless technology rolled out. So we were able to work and drive those requirements and capabilities into the network in the contract with AT&T.
Scott, how does FirstNet receive build instructions and expectations from the FirstNet Authority?
Right. So the authority does a great job, and I think that's part of the public-private partnership of really engaging with public safety. You have the FirstNet board, you have the Public Safety Advisory Council, and you have tens of thousands of public safety agencies. And I think this year alone, you had 1,400 events, 53,000 first responders, just significant amounts of feedback that is being received on where sites need to be built. Now, let's not confuse where a normal commercial carrier operates. We're going to build where it's profitable, where it makes sense for a network. Public safety are purpose-built sites where the disasters occur, where they need to get out. So basically, feedback from public safety will go to the authority. The authority will then determine those investment opportunities and then instruct AT&T to go deliver on behalf of public safety. And then we become contractually obligated to not only build that site, but operate and maintain that site to all the standards that we have already committed to. So it's just it's a great way to expand purpose-built public safety coverage.
I kind of liken it sometimes as I tell people. I said, if you ever built a house, the people wanting the house built go to a builder and they've got plans, and somewhere along the way, what you wanted and what you get at the end of the day are two different things. But it's really, in my time and in my involvement, it's just been phenomenal. To see the progress that has been made. So the next one is back to you, Jeff. And how does public-private partnership differentiate FirstNet from other commercial offerings?
Yeah, great question. And Scott mentioned it, the oversight and transparency that's built into this program. Also, by the legislation-driven, Congress passed this act. They hold us accountable. We do an annual report to Congress. There's committees and oversight from Congress. Scott mentioned our board, our 15-member board. We have 3 federal board members that are permanent from the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and Office of Management and Budget. Then we have 12 board members selected from public safety as well as industry, not to mention all the oversight from contract legal departments, our Office of Inspector General. We welcome the oversight because it's all going to make this network built better for public safety. And we have a great relationship with AT&T, Scott, and his program team. We get a wealth of data to make sure they're delivering what was required under the contract. And again, those requirements are driven by public safety's needs into the network.
Scott, this also back to you in the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that oversight is a very critical piece, and it's rigorous, and it ensures that you have a healthy and strong network. I related earlier is FirstNet is the physical trainer, right? Basically, but they have access to all your data, what you eat, what your workout regimen is, and if there's anything wrong at any point in time, right, you've got to go work out, you've got to go fix that. And it's hour by hour, it's day by day, it's week by week. So the where public safety should think about this is their network is constantly being tested, and if there's an issue, which excellence not perfection, right, if there's ever an issue, you have the authority there ensuring that doesn't happen again, which is a really beautiful relationship. But then, just answering the question on, okay, well, it's the oversight right there just makes it different. But just from a technology perspective, let's talk about the contract and let's talk about the legislation and what it demands. First, you implemented a dedicated core, right? It's the world standard. It was the first dedicated core. The rest of the world is doing that. You implemented obligated dedicated spectrum to be launched nationwide. Again, differentiate. This isn't shared spectrum. This isn't spectrum that carriers are buying. This is purpose built for public safety. And you add on the rigorous requirements, end-to-end priority and preemption across the network, not just on a part of the network where a commercial carrier can say, I have this slicing technology that only sits in this small part of the network, but gets congested back here where nobody's paying attention, right? So having that rigorous requirement and that end-to-end priority ensures that public safety gets what they're expecting day to day. And then the obligations from a response operations group where we have over 180 assets where we'll deploy at no cost to public safety, such as in a wildland fire. And we went well beyond, and the collective in our feedback from public safety and understanding to get to some of those challenging areas. You can't bring a big old truck. You've got to have smaller form factors in place. And so we developed that to ensure. So there is huge differentiation, but it starts with the foundation that public safety knows they're getting a dedicated core on dedicated spectrum with rigorous priority and preemption across the.
And I would add to that, Chief, back to your technical vision question earlier as well. We spent 3-4 years putting out 13 requests for information from industry, from public safety. How do we build this? And Scott's right. You need a dedicated core. You need a dedicated network. So this is a recognized network, just like the other carrier networks. And I think we're now the fourth largest in the United States based on the number of connections. So tremendous technology advantage there. We can put those mission critical services into this core. It's serving public safety going forward.
And I think, in all my years, I look at it and to think that, that public safety was actually get Congress be able to pass this into law for the nation's, only public safety real network out there. In fact, you've got, between the government and AT&T as a contractor collaborating back and forth, but on the same end, and I've in my 48 years in the business, not every contract is good, and and some contracts are longer than others, and some are shorter depending on the number of issues. But like anything, it's like to me, it's kind of like being married. You've got good days and bad, and some adjustments that happen. But in the time we've been out here, it's been in place. From my standpoint, going from a user to where I sit today, I'm just so impressed at the progress that's being made, and it is that we haven't seen changes in leadership during this time either.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous success. Great points. Contracts have their ups and downs, but this has been a tremendous, in my opinion, AT&T's exceeded expectations we had with some of the original board members on delivering this for public safety. And it was really public safety's vision. We talked about it earlier. There were some key people, and I think you would agree, one of the first times they all agreed, EMS, law enforcement, fire, we got to get this done. And that vision, I'm just honored to keep and build on that vision.
And I think it's really pretty amazing and interesting, not surprising though, is how some of those original board members are still engaged.
Absolutely.
To this day, as some of your employees who are gone are still engaged. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, something to get passionate about. You've got public safety passionate about it. The authority's passionate, of course. AT&T is being a part of this is, like I said, amazing.
Yeah. Jeff, focusing on the standard piece, can you tell us what the 3GPP and why is that important to the FirstNet users?
Sure thing. So for the wireless industry, there's a standards body called the Third Generation Partnership Project. And I always think we're at 5G now. Why didn't they change their name? But they just stuck with 3G. So that is a worldwide standards body that all the vendors, all the wireless carriers worldwide participate in. Envision a room of 1,000 engineers sitting and arguing about wireless standards. That's what that committee does. And they do it every quarter. There's meetings every other week. We, as part of the legislation, had said, please represent public safety in those standards bodies. Because it was a small group. I mean, public safety worldwide, we did some rough math with TCCA, right? And measured, there'd be maybe 100 million connections worldwide, just public safety. And the wireless industry on the commercial side is 4 or 5 billion connections now. So a tenth of what the overall market is. But we're able to drive these requirements based on the legislation, based on a tier 1 wireless partner in AT&T to help drive these requirements and keep them relevant as the technology changes. So we're entering our 5G build out phase. The standards teams are already going to be talking about 6G for 2030 and beyond in later this year in upcoming standards meetings. And we're right there driving those unique public safety requirements.
I think a room of 1,000 engineers.
That sounds exciting, doesn't it?
It'd be like getting 1,000 doctors or 1,000 fire chiefs in a room. Oh my gosh.
And we have staff that love it. That is what they live for.
Oh, interesting. All right. Originally, some believe that the manufacturers wouldn't build devices for FirstNet. And Scott, how would you describe the hardware eco shift from then to now?
Yeah, it's interesting by engaging in this public-private partnership and the contract and the oversight and engaging a tier 1 provider has allowed that market to shift, and also putting the focus on public safety and public safety development. There's thousands of devices available now with Band 14. I mean, just about every device that comes out is going to be Band 14 capable, because it's such important spectrum for public safety to have and utilize. And it continues to grow and it continues to advance. You've got new technology that's out. Band 14, one of the legislation and the authority required in the contract to deploy a technology called high power UE or HPE. It's just a technology that ensures that the device is 6 times more powerful than your particular cell phone. Why is that important? Go farther from the tower. You're going to get about 20% more coverage. You're going to get double the speed. So this whole ecosystem continues to drive Apple, Samsung, your Sonim, your public safety specific devices are developing with Band 14.
Yeah, and I would add to that, even before FirstNet and the legislation was created, I was working in the public safety communications research program. Public safety had the D block. They had their dedicated spectrum that was kind of split before the legislation. And we talked to the big device manufacturers. The hurdle to get a new spectrum band into a device is tremendous.
Right.
If you don't have a tier 1 partner like AT&T driving those requirements, and it's a unique spectrum band with unique rules from the FCC, because it's under Part 90 rules, not the commercial rules. Back to Scott's mention on the high power, there's some unique advantages for public safety spectrum, and seeing AT&T drive that in. Sonim, I think, was one of the first ones. I watched the keynote where the first Samsung phone in 2015, 16 timeframe was announced with Band 14. And now we're over 600 devices on the certified list of Band 14 devices.
The list on the catalog is grown considerably. How my understanding is no other carrier can have the high-powered user equipment. How is that possible?
I'll touch on it. So the legislation combined the D block, got that dedicated spectrum, and also allocated $7 billion from future spectrum auctions to get this network up and running and be self-sustaining. So that was really our 2 key assets, Chief, we had as we did the 4 years of RFIs and talking to public safety. But what was critical to that was the value of that spectrum and making that a key asset, as well as the seed funding that we had to get this going. So that Band 14, we, as part of the contract, entered into AT&T a capacity lease agreement. The FirstNet Authority holds the license from the FCC for Band 14, but we in turn exclusively allow AT&T to use it not only to build the public safety network, but they can also use it secondarily for their commercial users.
Yeah. I just think it's, the high-powered side of what we do with FirstNet on Band 14. It's just so impressive that no other carrier can do what it does. And the devices to boost that capability today, it just, and I wonder to myself, I look and where we're at today and where we'll be tomorrow and the next day.
Yeah, it's going to continue to evolve. Jeff talked about the law basically saying, hey, it's allowing for the technology to occur. The contract then basically said, thou must have to deploy it. So now what do you have? It's deployed throughout the entire network, right? That technology, it's available. And then, of course, you've got devices, large routers, smaller hotspots, choices. And so without that public-private partnership, without that contract, without that oversight, that innovation for public safety is not going to occur, because there's companies that aren't going to take that significant risk to invent that new technology.
One thing, Chief, I'd add, Band 14 is great. As you mentioned, does bring a high power capability, et cetera. But the key benefit, and I applaud AT&T when we did the initial contract, is all spectrum band priority and preemption on the network. So that was a game changer. I mean, we were able to start adding users in 2018 while Band 14 was now being deployed.
And, I always listen to the stories, originally, not going to happen, no way. And, it's been really interesting. And, I look at, Scott's background and, before stepping in as the president over over, FirstNet for AT&T and product development from where you were
That's right.
assisting that to now you.
Yeah, that's been great. I mean, it's seeing it from the ground up and understanding it and what the inner workings are, why things were created, and really understanding the mission has been actually helpful for us to continue on. As Jeff was mentioning, as leadership changes, the torch gets passed. And again, everybody that's involved is very passionate about what we do. We need to make sure that we have a strong, resilient network for public safety.
Yeah, I would tell you, from my standpoint, being in the field and the opportunity to work with both sides, both from the federal side and the AT&T private side, the staffs are so passionate and believe in and it is just great. Let me move on to another question here. We know that FirstNet was originally estimated to have 2.1 million subscribers at the 7-year mark, and I think, from both your standpoint, tell us about where we are today and what the factors we attribute the success to.
Yeah, just amazing growth. I mean, look, it was a great idea. It was a great concept, well executed, applaud, many of the public safety leaders that drove this. I mean, they were right. And wow, has it been successful. Over 30,000 agencies have adopted, more than 7.5 million connections, and growing significantly. But back then, a lot of things weren't fully thought through. Again, just the massive impact on IoT, Internet of Things, the devices, body-worn cameras, smartwatches, tablets, vehicle routers, just those weren't contemplating as being critical for public safety operations. And so you see this adoption continue to grow as public safety's need for communication grows. And we're going to see that continue to grow with video and AI and that intelligence. And so they're going to be more wirelessly connected and continue to need this network more than ever.
Yeah, great question. We spent a lot of the early days before we put out the release, the request for proposals, the RFP. What's the total addressable market, right? How do you calculate it? Because it's not just a user, to your point, Chief. It's how many devices. We have a watch, we've got a phone, we've got body cameras, we've got tablets. So they've exceeded expectations. The other thing, the legislation did not mandate that anyone had to use this network. Public safety did not have to use it. So I think it's a testament with the growth and adoption rate. Public safety likes the network, and we're doing what they want and building it into the network.
Like you said, it's phenomenal. I had the chance not only to work with iChiefs to get the legislation for where we're at with FirstNet, but I had the opportunity to be on the California side for the opt-in and where we're at today. And it's hard to believe we're at a point now where we're looking at reauthorization, and so it's just exciting. So, another question here: can you tell us why 5G is critical to public safety, especially for firefighters?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I mentioned it: video, AI, just the need for bandwidth is going to continue to come. It's going to continue to advance, and so while the network is already 5G. Right, 5G standalone is a newer technology that's going to allow for more capacity. It's going to allow for more speeds. It's going to allow for more differentiation, such as slicing within a dedicated network. So public safety can prioritize within themselves, depending on the mission. So that's going to be very important, that end-to-end priority. Again, IoT, massive amounts of IoT and other technologies are going to be important. So that's why this evolution to 5G. Other reason is devices are going there, right? So you don't want to be left behind from a device standpoint. So these new SA devices are coming out. You need to make sure that they're optimized and performing for public safety on their network.
That would add for fire specifically. There's a lot of innovation, situational awareness, X, Y, and Z, but also video feeds, capabilities of what's happening in the incidents for fire specifically. You think of some of the high bandwidth requirements for video and all these sensors, biometrics off of the firefighters, ensuring they're safe while they're performing their job, and staying on the technology curve as these wireless networks grow. And as Scott mentioned, devices are moving to 5G. So that's where the industry's headed now.
Yeah, I think, and I've watched this evolve, especially on the wildland side. And it's kind of very interesting because we seem to ingest more bandwidth and more bandwidth.
That's right.
And, we're doing it in the rural areas, and we don't always have the infrastructure there. It's got to be brought in. And, just again, we're evolving so quickly. And, I look at, the early days when, even before there was FirstNet, we used to bring in deployables, and now we've got the FirstNet deployables. And then now you've got capability to people to own their own capability out there as well. And, that's evolving to where we're at today. So it's just amazing, let alone where we'll be in the very near future with satellites.
Right.
So
I would add, the fire one hits close to home. I'm out of our Boulder, Colorado office, and we had the Marshall Fire, if you remember that burned all the way up and took about 1,000 homes out. And it was very rewarding seeing the FirstNet ROG team pull up and assist with that disaster. But we see that everywhere. A lot of these wildland fires, it doesn't make sense to build a tower, but bring the network with you and be able to communicate on that. I visited some of the fire camps up in Colorado during that same time frame and seeing how the connectivity greatly enhanced their response capability.
Yeah. And to me, I think, both your organizations are not only watching, events across the country, they're watching the weather. And, you're communicating back and forth amongst yourselves. And, much in the same way, we public safety and the public expect. So you're not, you're not hesitant to pre-position or move assets where you believe they need to be in preparation someday. So I think, again, it's really interesting watching everything evolve. So let me move on. And finally, for those fighting fire in rural parts of the country, coverage is a game changer for response operations. So can you guys share about the progress of building towers in these areas or other innovations to ensure public safety is covered wherever they go?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a multi-layered approach of how we address for public safety, especially in wildland fires. A unique situation. First, you have to continue to build purpose-built sites, as I mentioned earlier before, specific sites, public safety requested. And you see sites like in Glenwood Canyon in Colorado, where it's specifically designed and built for public safety. You have the 1,000 sites that were just added as part of reinvestment. 46 states, one DC, all received additional towers. And then that incremental investment from FirstNet, as we talked about the tower process, that has to occur. So that's foundational table stakes. But on top of that, technologies like high-powered user equipment, you can go farther as you're going deeper in. So public safety having access to affordable devices that will extend the network. Then, as you mentioned as well, as compact rapid deploys, your own Band 14 cell site. It's very affordable in small form factors. Take it where you need it, so you take the coverage. We talked about the response operations group where we'll take the coverage. There's hundreds of agencies that actually have their own Band 14 cell sites that they can propagate. And the last piece, which is critical, it is absolutely critical, and we've got to get it right. And the contract forces us to get it right, and it is about deploying direct to cellular to make this very simple for first responders. Not a text messaging solution, not a light data solution, mission critical voice, public safety's dedicated Band 14 spectrum in space, connecting to devices such as an iPhone 15 and being able to have a meaningful conversation, two-way conversation with somebody in those areas is going to be critical. And so that technology is coming. So we give all these tools, and we're going to keep coming. That's not going to be the end of it. That's just the next phase.
So yeah, great point. That's really exciting on the horizon, the satellite Band 14 from space. I was very skeptical, I got to be honest, but saw some of the initial testing, like, wow, this is going to be amazing. And now we're doing coverage enhancement workshops all across all 56 states and territories. You can see the points of contact on our website. And that's, back to Scott's point, of purpose-built areas and towers that are needed for those communities. And the key benefit of this partnership, it's not just a public safety tower, it also brings a commercial usage as well. We've got several examples on tribal nations. We built towers as part of this program for their first responders. It's brought commercial and benefit to their citizens as well.
I just had the opportunity to, during last month, actually sit in Sacramento to one of those engagement sessions, and I wish they were more well attended. But I'll be real honest with you. It's really good to see the input and hear from people that are looking not only to what they have, but where we're going in the future. So that's been very, very exciting.
Well, the things with networks, they're never done, right?
That's right.
There's always areas we're investing in. It's right.
Well, I think as you engage in one, you're looking towards where your next one is. And, for anybody in the business, that's what you have to do to stay relevant. And if you don't, you won't be relevant. You won't be in business very long.
That's right.
So, well, that kind of brings us to the end for today's show. I wanted to thank you for being here to discuss the power of FirstNet program, especially for the firefighters in the audience. And again, another Catch Wildfire podcast as we discuss cutting edge technology and operation interventions in wildland. And again, special thanks to our two guests and for taking time out of your already busy schedules to share with the audience. So thank you again.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.